Some silences are louder than screams, the kind that settle in your bones and remind you that words failed long before you stopped speaking. For Alara, that silence began the day she received a folded letter with a broken wax seal, 3 words that ended her world. Your husband fell. No details, no explanation, just those 3 words and the suffocating quiet that followed. Now, 18 months later, she stood at the northern gate of Valdres Keep in a worn guard uniform that didn't quite fit, checking travel papers and pretending she wasn't the widow of the man who tried to overthrow the king, pretending the weight of shame and grief didn't crush her chest with every breath. The other guards avoided her eyes. The merchants who passed through whispered when they thought she couldn't hear. She'd become a ghost in her own life, invisible except for the stain of her husband's treason. Alara used to have a different life. She'd been a healer's daughter from the Midlands, trained in medicine and herbcraft from childhood. She met Darius when he was a captain in the king's army, before ambition poisoned him. He was charismatic, confident, everything she wasn't. He made her feel protected in a world that often felt overwhelming. They married young. She supported his rise through military ranks, tended his wounds after campaigns, believed in his dreams of a better kingdom. What she didn't see, what she refused to see until it was too late, was how those dreams twisted into obsession. Darius became convinced that King Theon, the immortal Beast King, was a tyrant who'd outlived his right to rule, that 300 years of power had corrupted him beyond redemption. Darius gathered supporters, other officers who felt overlooked or undervalued. They planned a coup, careful, methodical, supposedly bloodless. They would force the king to abdicate, establish a council, bring democracy to a kingdom that had known only monarchy. Alara found out 3 weeks before it happened. She begged Darius to stop, told him he was wrong about the king, that his information was skewed by bitter men with personal grudges. He called her naive, said she didn't understand politics or power. The coup failed within hours. The king's intelligence network was too good, his loyalists too numerous. Darius and 15 other conspirators were arrested. Alara waited for the executions. They never came. Instead, King Theon offered a choice: exile or service. The conspirators could leave the kingdom forever, or they could serve in the most dangerous positions in the military, places where their skills might actually protect people instead of threaten them. Darius chose the scorched frontier, the volcanic borderlands where raids were constant and survival was measured in weeks. He lasted 11 months. The letter that reached Alara was brief, because there wasn't much to say. He died defending a village from raiders. Died doing something that actually mattered for once. She felt grief and relief in equal measure, and the guilt of that relief nearly destroyed her. The kingdom stripped her of everything: her home, her husband's pension, her reputation. The king's mercy apparently didn't extend to conspirators' families. She ended up at Valdres Keep because it was the only place that would hire her. Gate guard, bottom tier. The job nobody wanted. She checked papers, directed travelers, and tried not to think about how far she'd fallen. The Beast King came through the North Gate on a rainy Thursday afternoon. No fanfare, no royal procession. Just the king and 2 guards on horseback, returning from an inspection of the border fortifications. Alara was the only guard on duty. Budget cuts meant they'd reduce the gate staff. She didn't recognize him at first, soaked through and wearing travel-stained clothing instead of royal regalia. Then he pulled back his hood to shake off the rain, and she felt her heart stop. King Theon. The man her husband had tried to destroy. The man who'd sent Darius to the frontier. Face to face with her, close enough to touch. She fumbled with the logbook, hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. "State your business," she managed, the formal words barely audible. He looked at her with those unnervingly direct eyes. Then recognition flickered across his face. "You're Alara, Darius's widow." Her throat closed. "Yes, Your Majesty." She waited for the accusation, the dismissal, the punishment she'd been expecting for 18 months. Instead, he dismounted, handed his horse's reins to one of his guards. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. He moved toward the guard tower, clearly expecting her to follow. She did, because what choice did she have? He was the king. He climbed the stairs to the tower's small observation deck. She followed, her mind racing through every terrible possibility. Once they were alone with the rain pattering on the stone around them, he turned to face her. "I need to tell you something about your husband, and I need you to actually hear it. Not the version you've probably been told, not the rumors, the truth." She braced herself. "Darius died protecting civilians," he began. "A raiding party hit Millstone Village, 20 families. The garrison was undermanned because of a supply delay. Your husband had 6 soldiers against 30 raiders. He could have retreated to the fortified position and waited for reinforcements, standard protocol. Instead, he led a direct defense, held the village center for 4 hours until backup arrived. Every civilian survived. He didn't make it." Her vision blurred. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to know that whatever else he was, whatever mistakes he made, he died as a hero, not as a traitor, as someone who chose to protect people when it mattered most. That's why I made the offer I did, Alara. Exile or service. I gave them a chance to be better than their worst decision. Your husband took it seriously. The tears came before she could stop them. You sent him there to die. I sent him there to matter. There's a difference. The frontier is brutal, yes, but it's also where people need protection most desperately. Your husband had skills, leadership ability, tactical knowledge. I could have executed him, which was his legal fate, or I could give him an opportunity to use what he was good at for something that actually helped people. He made the choice, Alara. He chose service, and he died doing something honorable. She pressed her palms against her eyes. Then why am I here, working the gate like a criminal? Why did you take everything from me? I didn't. He looked genuinely confused. Your husband's estate was returned to his family 3 months after his death. Full military honors, pension, letter of commendation. I signed the orders myself. Alara felt the ground shift beneath her.
What? The pension, the property deed, the letter? All sent to your listed address. You should have received them months ago. She thought of Captain Vorel, the garrison commander who'd offered her the gate position, the man who told her the kingdom had seized everything, that she was lucky to have any job at all, the man who'd collected her husband's papers and promised to handle the estate settlement. Oh, gods, she whispered. Vorel. Theon's expression darkened. What about Vorel? He told me the crown took everything, that I was being granted mercy by being allowed to work, that I should be grateful for the gate position because it was more than I deserved. The king pulled out a small notebook, wrote something quickly. That man is about to have a very bad day. But right now, I'm more concerned about you. When did you last eat? The question was so unexpected she laughed, a bitter sound. This morning, stale bread. Theon studied her. You're a trained healer.
Your records show advanced certification in field medicine and herbcraft, and you're checking travel documents at a gate? Yes, Your Majesty. That changes today. Come with me. The next 2 hours moved like a fever dream. Theon marched her directly to the keep's administrative office, demanded her full file, and proceeded to tear through Vorel's falsified reports with surgical precision. Every instance where documents had been buried, payments redirected, her credentials deliberately hidden. Vorel had been systematically stealing from multiple widows, using his position to embezzle funds meant for families of fallen soldiers. By the time Theon finished, 3 other officers were implicated, and Vorel was in chains. Ilara stood in the administrative office, watching the king dismantle corruption with the same intensity her husband had once aimed at overthrowing him, and felt her entire understanding of the world reorganize itself. You didn't have to do this, she said when they finally stepped outside. Theon looked at her like she'd said something absurd. Yes, I did. Your husband and I were enemies because he believed I was corrupt. He was wrong about me, but he was right about people like Vorel.
men who use power to exploit the vulnerable. If I'd ignored what was happening to you, I'd be exactly the tyrant Darius thought I was. He started walking toward the keep's medical wing. She followed, still trying to process everything. I have a proposition, Theon said. The royal medical staff is understaffed. We need a field medic supervisor, someone who can train others and coordinate emergency response. It pays well, comes with housing in the keep, and it would make use of your actual skills instead of wasting them at a gate. She stopped walking. Why would you help me? My husband tried to kill you. He tried to remove me from power. There's a difference. And he failed because his information was bad and his methods were flawed.
Not because his concerns were invalid. I've been king for 3 centuries, Alara. You know how many coup attempts I've survived? 17. You know what every single one taught me? That when people feel unheard or exploited, they get desperate. Your husband's mistake was believing I was the problem instead of people like Vorel. But his instinct to fight corruption, that was right. So no, I'm not going to punish you for his failed rebellion. I'm going to offer you a chance to actually fix the things he was angry about. She felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been locked tight since the day that letter arrived. I don't understand you. You're supposed to be a beast. They call me that because I refuse to perform the version of leadership people expect. But ask yourself this. Did I execute your husband, or did I give him a chance to matter? Did I let corruption continue, or did I stop it the moment I found out? The version of me your husband believed in doesn't exist. The real me is standing here offering you a job because wasting talent is stupid, and punishing people for someone else's choices is cruel. She looked at this immortal king, who was supposed to be cold and distant, who just spent 2 hours fighting for the widow of a man who'd betrayed him, and made a decision. I accept, but I have one condition. Theon raised an eyebrow. Bold. What condition? Tell me what really happened. The coup attempt. Why you offered service instead of execution. I need to understand. He considered her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but not here. Come to dinner tomorrow night. I'll tell you everything. And fair warning, it's a long story. Dinner was in the king's private study, not the formal dining hall. Alara arrived in her best dress, which wasn't very good, and found Theon in casual clothing, surrounded by maps and reports.
He poured wine and gestured to a comfortable chair. Sit, eat, then I'll tell you about the day I almost died. She settled in and he began. Your husband's coup was supposed to be bloodless. Force me to abdicate, establish a council, transition to democracy. In theory, noble goals. In practice, catastrophically naive. He leaned back. I've ruled for 300 years not because I'm power-hungry, but because this kingdom has a fundamental magical problem. The immortality that makes me the Beast King is tied to the land itself. Ancient magic woven so deeply into the realm's foundation that if I die or leave, the protective wards collapse. Creatures from the void realms would pour through within weeks. The kingdom would fall to things that make raiders look like children playing with wooden swords. So when your husband and his conspirators tried to force my abdication, they weren't just threatening my rule.
They were threatening to unleash apocalyptic horror on millions of innocent people, and they had no idea. The intelligence they were working from was deliberately false, fed to them by foreign agents who wanted exactly that outcome. She felt sick. Darius didn't know. No, he thought he was saving people from a tyrant. Instead, he was being manipulated into destroying them. When I captured the conspirators, I had every legal right to execute them. They'd committed treason. But I looked at these men and saw people who cared enough about their kingdom to risk everything, even if they were catastrophically wrong about the threat. So I made a choice. Send them to places where their skills could actually help people. Let them die as heroes instead of traitors. Give them a chance to be what they thought they were fighting for. Some died, like your husband. Some survived,
and are now serving with distinction in positions where they protect civilians. They had the chance to matter.
That's more than most traitors get. Alara set down her wine glass with shaking hands. He died believing you were evil. Theon's expression tightened with something like pain. I know, and I'm sorry for that, but I couldn't tell him the truth without revealing magical vulnerabilities that foreign powers could exploit. So he died angry at me, but he died protecting people. I'll live with that guilt. It's not the first time I've had to choose between truth and survival. She thought about Darius, about the man she'd loved and the man he'd become, about the king sitting across from her who'd shown more mercy than she'd ever imagined possible. Can I ask you something personal? Theon nodded. 300 years alone, how do you not become the monster everyone thinks you are? By remembering that every person I meet is someone's child, someone's spouse, someone's friend. By understanding that cruelty is easy and mercy is hard, but one builds kingdoms while the other destroys them.
And by surrounding myself with people who will tell me when I'm wrong, even if it's uncomfortable. He met her eyes. People like you, if you're willing. She felt the weight of that offer. Not just a job, a role, a purpose. I spent 18 months believing I was being punished for his choices, that I deserved the shame and the poverty and the silence. But you're telling me none of that was supposed to happen. It wasn't. And the man responsible is being held accountable. But Alara, I need you to understand something. Your husband made a choice based on bad information and genuine conviction. That doesn't make him evil. It makes him human. You don't have to defend him or condemn him. You just have to decide who you want to be now. Who did she want to be? Not the silent widow working a gate. Not the woman crushed under shame that wasn't hers to carry. Something else. Something new. I want to help, she said finally.
I want to be part of fixing the things that made good people think rebellion was the only answer. I want to matter. Then, welcome to the team. He raised his glass. To second chances and honest conversations. The months that followed changed everything. Alara became the royal medical supervisor, reorganizing the entire healthcare system. She established clinics in underserved areas, trained field medics, created protocols that saved countless lives. She worked alongside the king regularly and discovered he wasn't the distant ruler of legend. He was someone who genuinely cared about his people, but was exhausted from centuries of carrying impossible burdens alone. They became friends, real friends, the kind where she could tell him his ideas were terrible and he'd actually listen, where he'd check on her after difficult days and she'd remind him to eat when he got lost in strategic planning. The court whispered, of course, the Beast King and the traitor's widow.
But Theon shut down the gossip with characteristic bluntness. She's the best medical supervisor this kingdom has had in a century. Anyone who has a problem with her qualifications can bring it to me directly. No one did. 3 years into her position, during a late night reviewing supply routes, Theon said something that changed everything. I need to tell you something. He looked nervous, which was bizarre for an immortal king. I've been thinking about what you asked me once, how I don't become a monster. The truth is, people keep me human. Specific people who remind me what I'm protecting and why it matters. You've become one of those people, Alara. Somewhere between the day I found you at that gate and now, you became someone I can't imagine not having in my life. She felt her heart stutter. Theon, I know it's complicated. You're my employee. You're my enemy's widow. The power dynamic is a nightmare. But I need you to know that when I think about the next century,
The only version that doesn't feel unbearable is the one where you're in it. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know. She thought about Darius, about loving him and losing him and carrying the weight of his choices, about the king who'd shown her mercy when she expected punishment, who'd fought for her when he had no reason to, who'd somehow become the most important person in her life. I spent years thinking love was about protection, she said slowly, that I needed someone strong to keep me safe. But that's not what love is. Love is about being seen, actually seen. The good parts and the broken parts and everything in between. You see me, Theon, all of me. The healer and the widow and the woman who's still figuring out who she wants to be. And I see you, not the Beast King or the legend or the immortal, just the man who's been carrying the weight of the world for so long he forgot what it felt like to share it. So yes, whatever this is, whatever it becomes, yes.
He crossed to her and took her hands. We'll figure out the complicated parts, the politics, the past, all of it. But right now, in this moment, I just want you to know that you matter. Not because of what you do or who you were married to, because of who you are. They kissed, like people discovering something new and precious. And outside the study window, the kingdom slept peacefully under wards maintained by a king who'd finally found someone to share the weight. Years passed. Alara and Theon married quietly. No grand ceremony, just a simple exchange of vows in the same study where they'd had that first honest dinner. She continued her medical work, expanded it into education and social reform. He supported every initiative, learning to share power in ways he'd never managed before. They faced challenges, political opposition from those who thought a traitor's widow shouldn't be queen, memories of Darius that still ached some days.
The complicated reality of building something new on the ruins of something painful, but they built it anyway, together. On the 5th anniversary of the day they met at the gate, Theon took her back to that spot. The guard tower had been renovated, turned into a memorial for soldiers who died in service. Darius's name was there, listed among the honored dead, not as a traitor, as a defender of Millstone Village. Alara traced the carved letters with gentle fingers. He would have hated that you're the one who gave him this. Theon put his arm around her. Probably, but he died earning it. That's what matters. She leaned into him. Do you think he'd understand, eventually, about us? I think he'd be furious and confused and probably try to punch me if he were still alive. But I also think maybe he'd see that you're happy and that you're doing more good than he ever dreamed of accomplishing. That has to count for something. It does, she agreed. It really does.
They stood there as the sun set, the traitor's widow and the immortal king, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of betrayal and built something better than either of them had imagined possible. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was full of understanding, of shared purpose, of love that had grown in the most unlikely soil. If this story reminded you that mercy can be more powerful than vengeance, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a comment with the word moon if you believe broken things can be rebuilt into something beautiful. Share this video with someone who needs to know that their worst chapter doesn't define their entire story. Sometimes the person you thought was your enemy becomes the one who helps you find yourself again. Thanks for watching, and remember, it's never too late for a second chance.